So the Bulls are doing it again. They're doing another Ring of Honor in the upcoming season. Hopefully it goes a little bit better than the last one. I'm going to discuss who is being put forward for this one right after this.
It's time to see red.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to another Chicago Bulls Chat with See Red UK. I'm your host, Neill, and this is where sleep is optional and loving the Bulls isn't. So, the class of 2025, the Ring of Honor for the Chicago Bulls has been announced. And I think there's some great choices for this year's honorees. And I'm going to talk a little bit about them and what I think. But you let me know, do you think that the honorees that have been named are good or bad? Let me know in the comments below. Make sure you give me a thumbs up. And of course, to make sure you don't miss out on anything, make sure you are fully subscribed to all of our programs on this channel. So the class has been announced. So I'm just going to rattle them off quickly, and then I'm going to break down a little bit about each one. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I do think that this is a very good class. So first of all, we've got Johnny Back. Then you've got Bill Cartwright, Neill Funk, Horace Grant, John Paxson, and Norm Van Leer. Now, if there's any names on this list that you aren't aware of, are you really a Bulls fan at all? I don't know, because these are some pretty big names. Probably the least ones that might be unknown by some of the younger fans among us are the likes of Johnny Buck, Norm Van Leer, and Neill Funk. I'm pretty sure every other name on that list would be really well known, regardless of when you came into your Bulls fandom. So anyway, just a quick lowdown on each person that has been named. First and foremost, before I get into it, I truly believe that every single person on this list deserves their place in the Ring of Honor, even though there may be one in particular that would be classed as a little bit controversial, but I'm going to get into that. I'm going to save that one till last. So first of all, Johnny Buck. Johnny Buck was, well, first of all, he was an assistant coach during the Bulls three-peat, the first three-peat and beyond. And he was hired in by Phil Jackson. He played a little bit briefly in the NBA, played for the Boston Celtics and played for Fordham University before that, where he also coached for a short time before he moved into the NBA. Considered a basketball lifer around the NBA. And the thing that he was probably best known for in his coaching tenure was he was the mastermind behind the defensive movement that was known as the Doberman defense of Horace Grant, Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, and all those guys in the first three-peat. That defense was renowned for being suffocating. And a lot of the time that kind of gets forgotten. And it's why the Bulls dynasty was as successful and as incredible as it was because it wasn't just all about offense and what they could do on the floor offensively. And a lot of the time that kind of gets talked about so much that it gets forgotten that this team were absolutely unstoppable defensively as well. They would suffocate players defensively. And they just had such a tenacious way of defending the court. And it was incredible that they were so prolific both on the offensive and defensive ends of the floor. And, you know, back then it was a big thing that defense wins championships. And it's certainly something that was promoted by Johnny Buck and was pushed forward as part of the dynasty with Phil Jackson. So after he left the Bulls, he also served under several different teams across the NBA. The Hornets, the Pistons are two of them, and returned briefly then to the Bulls in the 2000s. He coached into his 80s. So this guy really was a basketball lifer. He gave his all to the game, and I think that he absolutely deserves to be honored in the Ring of Honor ceremony. It will be posthumous. Unfortunately, he passed away at the age of 91 in 2016. So he is getting this in post, but it's still great for his family and for his achievements as an assistant coach throughout the NBA and particularly for the Chicago Bulls. So congratulations, Johnny Buck and your family on this honor. So then the next one then, of course, is Big Bill Cartwright. If you don't know the story of Bill Cartwright, he has a fantastic book. It's well worth finding and reading. This guy is a great advocate for the game of basketball and Bulls basketball. He didn't initially gel particularly well with MJ when he first came into the team. It's renowned, the story that Jordan didn't want Charles Oakley to go, and that was part and parcel of Bill Cartwright coming into the team. But it also became well known that Bill Cartwright, despite all the little rumbles up and down with Michael, found his place and became a serious part of the Chicago Bulls dynasty teams in the first 3 years of the championship years. And Bill Cartwright, renowned for having sharp elbows, was the thing that always comes up with Bill Cartwright. You knew if you got a hop of the elbow that you were waking up with a headache the next day if you didn't get knocked out there and then. But Bill Cartwright, I love Big Bill. I loved watching him play, and definitely a deserving member of this Ring of Honor class, 25 class. So then the next one on the list is Neill Funk. Neill Funk, let's just say that I believe Stacey King would say that he wouldn't be who we know and love today as a commentator if it wasn't for Neill Funk. The two of them worked side by side for a long time, and Neill Funk obviously was there even before Stacey. And they worked together for a long time. He's even made a few appearances. I think last season he made an appearance, and he was commentating on the side with Stacey. And it's always great. It's one of those voices that if you grew up in the 90s or you were around in the 90s watching the Bulls play, it was Neill Funk's voice that was in your ear all the time. Absolutely fantastic at his job. So knowledgeable, so enjoyable to listen to, really exciting and fun to listen to, and it's kind of become the stereo sound of the championship years for me anyway. So 100% love the fact that they are honouring Neill Funk. Horace Grant then, again, big part of the first three-peat. Horace Grant was the centre of the defence for the first three championship years of the Chicago Bulls. Horace still to this day is an advocate for Bulls basketball, and you can see him always popping up around the place and representing the Chicago Bulls on podcasts, through the media, on TV, at the games. But Horace on the floor, I suppose as a Bulls fan for me, Horace Grant was the first player that I saw the Bulls trade away that hurt. It was the first player that I did not want to see leave the Chicago Bulls, but he was traded to the Orlando Magic. But Horace was unbelievably tenacious, a real powerhouse on the defensive end, but also he could make things happen offensively as well, and really helped round out that first trio in Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, and Horace Grant as well. So absolutely agree with Horace Grant getting this. I couldn't be happier for him. I tweeted it out as soon as I heard. I absolutely love this for Horace Grant. And for me, even though he was gone for the back end of the championship years with the Chicago Bulls, he is such a staple of the dynasty. And like I say, he was the first player I loved that I saw kind of leave the Bulls. So it'll always stick in my mind in that respect. The last one, Norm Van Leer, before I really get into the nitty gritty of the last player that's been named, that could be the one that's a little bit controversial to some, and that's Norm Van Leer. Norm Van Leer is he is really remembered as a Chicago Bulls. I suppose the best way to describe him is a staple of the Bulls' history and the legacy of the Bulls, and known as Stormin' Norman, of course. He was drafted in 1969 by the Chicago Bulls in the third round, but traded straight away to the Cincinnati Royals, who are now, of course, the Sacramento Kings. And in 1971, he was traded back to the Bulls, where he would spend the prime years of his career as a Chicago Bull, from 1971 until 1978, which was a great year because that was the year I was born. To play point guard, famous for his defensive intensity and never backing down regardless of who he was going up against. He played with that true blue-collar style basketball way that Chicagoans and Chicago fans love to see, the kind of player that we really all embrace as Bulls fans. And in 71 to 72, he was the league leader in assists, with career averages of 11.8 points, 7 assists, 4.8 rebounds per game. But he's one of those players that the stats don't show you enough of what kind of a player he was. He's one of those players who affected the game a lot more than the stats could actually show and provide. And so he had to be appreciated by watching him play. And we've seen a few players like that coming through the Bulls over the years. So you know exactly what I'm getting at. Players like your Alex Caruso, who the stats don't show you enough of what they do on the floor. He was a flashy scorer, but was, like I say, renowned as being this tough-edged, real fighting type of a hard-nosed guard throughout the 70s. He embodied grit and leadership and locked down opposing guards, and this kind of helped set the tone for the team back in at that time. Playing alongside the likes of Jerry Sloan, Bob Love, Chet Walker, Artis Gilmore, and he was really widely considered as one of the greatest defensive guards in Bulls history before the likes of Jordan and Pippen came into the fray. He actually retired in 79, became a broadcaster, analyst, and media personality within Chicago, which a lot of players tend to do. They kind of fall into that role. And he was known for being quite straight and quite blunt and very passionate about the Bulls, which, you know, is always going to go down well with any part of Bulls Nation. And he was really appreciated and beloved for that. He'll also be remembered post. And he passed away, sadly, on February 26, 2009, at the age of 61. And it was the same time that Johnny Red Kerr also passed away. It was literally hours between the two of them passing. And so obviously a very, very sad day that was for Chicago Bulls fans and Bulls Nation. But he's one of the big Bulls icons and toughest competitors ever to wear a Bulls jersey. So congratulations to Norm Van Leer and his family on this honor. Which brings me into the final nominee for the Ring of Honor class. And this is the one that's going to split people. This is the one that's going to divide people. And what I beg people and implore people to do is take out your feelings as much as you possibly can for the back end of this guy's tenure with the Bulls and continued tenure with the Bulls. He is still in position in the Chicago Bulls, albeit not in the same position that he carried for many years. I want you to remember or honor this player as a player and not as a member of the front office so much, because that's where it gets muddied. And believe me, I've been there too. I know what you're saying. I know where you're coming from when you feel like maybe booing John Paxson. But I do implore people not to do what happened last time, not to lower yourself, and to respect the fact that without John Paxson, it would have been a little bit trickier to win certainly the third championship ring with the Chicago Bulls. As he hit the game-winning shot, that was the championship-winning shot. And let's remember those sides for this event and not have a repeat performance of the embarrassment, blatantly, of what it was last year. We will prove that we are bigger people than that, better fans than that, and give this man his dues as a player. So John Paxson was known as a sharpshooting guard, drafted originally by the San Antonio Spurs in 1983, and then became best known for his playing years with the Bulls from 85 to 94. Reliable role player alongside Jordan, Pippen and Horace Grant. Seemingly, as was often the case, didn't always see eye to eye with Jordan, but he earned the respect of Jordan very much so by standing his ground and hitting his shots, being in the right place, knowing the game well enough. And that's enough for Jordan. If you play hard enough, if you are enough of a player in regards to knowing the game, putting in the effort, being available, all of those things, you will win Jordan round, to the point where he respected and trusted John Paxson enough to take that game-winning shot against Phoenix in 1993. And that was, of course, the shot that won and sealed the championship for the Bulls. He retired in 1994 with that reputation of being a clutch shooter and a floor leader as well. And that's what I want you to remember, okay? Because that's the good stuff. And there's still some good stuff in his post-playing career too. And I'm just gonna brush over that quickly. He worked as a TV broadcaster initially once he retired, and he was fine with that. That was good. And then he became a part of the front office, serving initially as general manager from 2003 to 2009, and then executive vice president of basketball operations from 2009 to 20. And that front office tenure, that's where he gets mixed and muddied. He was pretty good at drafting players, especially early on. The likes of Luol Deng, Joakim Noah, Derrick Rose, they're all part and parcel of his draftees, and all very successful drafts, of course, and picks. But then there are a lot of free agency misses, and that's where the massive criticism tends to come in. He was known as a Bulls lifer. Obviously, he gave his majority of his playing career to the Bulls, and he's given the majority of his post playing years to the Bulls also. But between himself and Gar Forman, belovedly known as Gar Pax, I say that tongue-in-cheek, of course, he had a reputation of being a bit overly cautious, sometimes missing out on big-name free agents as a result of this. One of the most famous ones, of course, was Ben Wallace. By the time they managed to get Ben Wallace, his best days were well behind him from the Pistons, and he kind of fizzled out, became a bit of a nothing trade, or should I say, free agent signing. And it was those kind of hits / misses that did them no favors, himself and Gar, and it's really tarnished his memory in the minds of Bulls fans and Bulls Nation. Hey, listen, I'm with you. I'm not here to defend him. I'm just here to explain. So, of course, the big one was probably the most damaging one. In 2010, the free agency group of LeBron James, Chris Bosh, and Dwayne Wade. And we all know how that played out. It was a mess. It was a farce. It didn't go very well. They all opted, of course, to be the big three in Miami instead of Chicago, televised. It was farcical, to be honest with you. And I mean, you can't blame John Paxson as much as you blame the players that were involved in it and the circus that they made out of it. But it is one of those things that's considered a major miss by the Gar-Pax duo, and it will always remain in the minds of all Bulls fans, I think. So they ended up settling for Carlos Boozer, who was solid for the Bulls. He did a good job. You had Kyle Korver, Ronnie Brewer, CJ Watson. But while Boozer was solid, he never really was a superstar, and the other players were, of course, role players. Kyle Korver was a great three-point shooter. I really like Kyle Korver, but he didn't really bring the Bulls any further along. He did a lot better with Atlanta when he went there, of course. But it didn't end there either. Then in the mid-2010s, you had the Carmelo Anthony farce. I mean, there was billboards with his picture on and everything, and signed. Was he signed? Ended up not coming to the Bulls. It was a bit of a mess, despite involving Derek Rose and Joakim Noah to try and bring him in. That was another miss. And at this stage, Bulls fans are getting a bit fed up. But there were other missed chances that were kind of rumoured to be around, which did him no favours as well. The likes of Kevin Garnett, T-Mac, and again in 2014 with LeBron. But they never seemed to close any of these deals. It was all just talk and speculation, and nothing ever seemed to come. And all of those speculative stories that never came into fruition just damaged the whole reputation of John Paxson and Gar Forman and Gar Pax as a duo. So unfortunately, they became kind of renowned for being risk averse, conservative, too focused on finding the right type of guy instead of closing deals and taking swings. And that wasn't great, of course. So unfortunately, that is what sticks in the minds of a lot of Bulls fans. And I really, really hope that things like Paxson actually saying, and he did say publicly, that he doesn't love chasing free agents. He prefers to find Bulls type guys. That sort of stuff was really damaging to him and pivotal in him taking that step back away and allowing a new front office to come forward, especially once Gar Forman was gone, who, in my own opinion, Gar Forman was the bigger problem. But yeah, so that's kind of all I can say to you about it. So I get it. I get the negativity. I understand how things like Pau Gasol and Rip Hamilton didn't move the needle for fans and for the team enough, and fell for criticism to John Paxson. But what I am asking you to do is remember, John Paxson was part of the championship years in the first 3 championships and was integral to the 3rd championship win against the Phoenix Suns. So let's remember that. Let's honor him for that. Be bigger, be better, and don't boo this year. I know it's a big ask. I get why it's a big ask, but you can do it. Believe in it. Congratulations to all of the Ring of Honor celebrants this year, or for this upcoming season. Congratulations. It's well deserved. I do believe across the board. Let me know what you think down below. In the meantime, I've been Neill. This has been C-Red UK. And remember, C-Red people, wherever in the world you are, go Bulls.